right, Sarah Neil, we're going to work through a couple of these. So we learned how to do proofs today. If you'll print out the slides that I have online, there's also a key form so you can see how you do. I'm going to do two of these with you. Then I'm going to let you try your own. So what a proof is like methodically working through answering a question here. So I'm going to show you the two ways you're going to be responsible for them. One is going to be doing a statements and reasons chart. So I'm going to answer this proof with you, but I'm going to write the answer over here. So the first thing you do is you write statements and reasons. So what you're going to do here is you're going to make a statement and tell me why you think it's true. So for instance, looking at our question here, we state that RA is congruent to RE, and we also state that EC is congruent to AC. And the reason that's true is because it's given. They tell you it's true. So I'm allowed to write that in on my statements. So I'm going to write on my statements that RA is congruent to RE, and I'm also going to write that EC is congruent to AC. All right. Reason for that being is that it's given. That's a freebie that they give us, okay? Now I'm going to look at this, and once you write your givens, you're then going to try to prove somehow, is there another angular side of this triangle RAC that matches an angular or side of this triangle RAC? And you can see that they both share this side RC. And that's the reflexive property. We learned that last class, that RC equals itself because it's a shared side. So I'm allowed to write that RC equals RC. Oh, sorry, I wrote E. That's a C. Oh, that erased perfectly. RC equals RC by the reflexive property. Okay. So you'll see that we've proven these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. All right. So I can write that statement. I can say that triangle REC is congruent to RAC by side, side, side. So triangle REC is congruent to triangle RAC by side, side, side. So list your givens. Prove whatever sides or angles you can find extra that match up from some property we've learned before. And then if you can, state if the triangles are congruent, which we can. We're almost done. So the last part is this. They ask us to prove is E congruent to A, this angle. Well, yes, they are, because we know the triangles are congruent. If the triangles are congruent, all their corresponding parts must also be congruent. So I can now say that angle E is congruent to angle A by CPCTC, which is this right here, means that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So all that means is that if you have two triangles that are congruent, all their corresponding sides and angles will match up. So instead of having to write this big long thing right here, you're allowed to abbreviate. Okay. And then when you get done with the proof, just like you put a period at the end of a sentence in math, you put 3 dots that form a triangle. That means you're all done. Cool. So I'm going to skip down. I want you to skip down also to this guy right here, because this one's kind of tricky. What I'm going to have you do, I'm going to do 2 of these, and then I'm going to have you try the rest. The key's online. And that's what we did in class. There's also a homework worksheet with 3 of them that I'd like you to try also. You are allowed to skip. Let me see here. Actually, I took it off yours, so you don't even have to worry about it. So we're going to do this one. The other way of doing a proof is a paragraph proof, which you write things in sentences. It's actually not that bad. So we're going to do this proof just like we did the last one. We'll start out with our givens and write that out. So I is the midpoint of these 2 segments. So I'm going to say I is the midpoint of CM and BL. So I can write that as one sentence. So that's kind of nice. And that's our given, right? It says that. Can you also see that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because they're vertical angles? Hopefully you can. So I can state angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because they are vertical angles. All right. Now here's kind of the tedious point here is that, yes, we do know I is the midpoint of these two segments, which means it cuts these segments into half. So CM, that I is the midpoint of that. So that means this is congruent to that. And since I is also the midpoint of BL, that means this right here is also congruent to this, but you have to list that. So we have this statement, but you have to use it to say the sides are congruent. So I'm now going to say that CI is congruent to IM. So CI is congruent to IM. And let's go back here. Not only that, but LI, this segment, is congruent to IB. Is congruent to IB. And why is that? Because that's what a midpoint does. Okay, so you're allowed to write that this is congruent to that and that is congruent to that by definition of a midpoint. That's what a midpoint does. Okay, so if you're ever not sure, a lot of times you just say definition of whatever the tool is you're using. That works about 90% of the time. Now let's go back to our triangle. Hopefully you can see now that these two triangles are congruent by side angle side. So we'll write that in. I'm going to say triangle CIL. We now know triangle CIL is congruent to triangle. So CIL will be congruent to MIB by side angle side. So now that we've proven the triangles are congruent, do we know that CL is congruent to BM or MB? We do. So now we can now say CL is congruent to MB by CPC/TC, which again just states that if we know the triangles are congruent, we know their corresponding angles and sides will also be congruent. So again, like I said, I want you to try the rest of these on your own. Okay, it's only 3 problems. Your homework, let's see here, your homework. So that the key for that is here. Here are them blank, print that out. And then your homework, I'll post the key here in a sec, but this is the homework. It's 3 more problems. So that'll give you 6 to do. So that'll be a good amount. And hopefully we can clarify that next class. All right, good luck.